Welcome to Grow and Go with me, Tyler. This is for the ones who keep showing up again and again, hungry for more of God, but weary of striving. If you've ever felt stuck, worn out, or unsure of how to move forward in faith, you're in the right place. Here we grow, not by our own effort, but by leaning into what God has already done, and we go, not in exhaustion, but in the freedom He gives. Sometimes I'll be sitting down with guests to learn from their journeys. Other times it will be just you and me, diving into scripture, unpacking messages I've shared, or wrestling through what it means to walk this out in real life. Wherever you are, on a walk, in the car, folding the laundry, take a breath, settle in, and let's grow and go together.
Joining me on the podcast today is Campbell. Ali is a youth and children's ministry consultant and has been running the resource as a freelancer for the last decade. Before that, he was youth and children's advisor for a Church of England diocese, youth pastor for a church in West London. Ali has led and supported youth and children's ministry locally and nationally over the years and continues to volunteer on the children's and youth ministry teams in his local church. Ali is married to the lovely Lisa, and they have two wonderful daughters. When he is not got his ministry consultant hat on, Ali enjoys time in the caravan with his family, good coffee, reading sci-fi, and listening to jazz funk. How exciting. Ali, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
It's really, really great to have you on. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today, not least because I have had a stint or two where I've overseen youth or children's teams, and I just think it's one of the times that I've grown most in my walk with Jesus is when I am hanging out with young people who are seeking him. And so I think it should be like a prescription for everybody in the church to be involved with youth and children's ministry. But we'll come on to some of that in a minute. Let's just get to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
So sometimes I like to play this or that with my guests. And there's no right or wrong answer unless I decide that it's the wrong answer, and then we'll have to dive into that. But we've already discovered that you're a coffee person as opposed to coffee or tea. So how about sweet or savoury?
Savoury.
Okay. Is there a particular
I think I would say savoury
go-to that you would enjoy for savoury?
Well, I do like meat, so I think when I think savoury,
yes.
I think anything with bacon in it.
Oh, come on. You are speaking my child's love language.
So if I had a bacon and cheese croissant right now, that would be great.
Okay, that would hit the spot. So I have three kids. My middle one is quite interesting. When I was pregnant with each of them, I had really different cravings. And my middle one, I just wanted to eat bacon or pork basically all the time. And he is obsessed with bacon. So there you go. Like from the womb, he was like the bacon was calling. Okay. Early bird or night owl?
Early bird. So I'm generally up about 6:20. And
nice.
my wife gets a little bit, not frustrated, but she is amazed that I can literally be asleep and then sit bolt upright and get out of bed in kind of one movement. So that still amazes her after 25 plus years of marriage.
I do think that's quite a skill to be able to go from being fast asleep and then boom, you're in the day ready to go. Like, I think a lot of people, it would take a bit of kind of coming round, rousing yourself, rise up, you one that slumbers. How does that work with doing youth ministry over the years, if that has at times tended to be more late night stuff?
Yeah, I guess it's grown. The older I've got, the earlier I'm getting up, I would say.
Yeah.
So I think there was a tendency when we first got married when I would be up at 7 and just be up. So that kind of kicked in early on, the kind of just get up out of bed straight away. I've never been one for knocking the alarm off and then staying there. I do enjoy it on a Saturday if we have a lie-in. I do enjoy that, but I do start to get antsy if we get to like 8:30 and we're not up.
You've got stuff to do, places to go, people to see. I love it.
Well, breakfast to eat generally is the kind of thing.
Give me my meat.
That's why. Well, not necessarily for porridge. We're on porridge at the minute, so.
Okay, very healthy, very good. It sustains you. The slow release of the oats. Love it. Dogs or cats?
Neither.
You are.
I mean, I would say we're not.
Stop for everyone.
Okay, dogs then. But I would say we're not pet people, so we just aren't.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll let you off.
I'd take a dog over a cat, I think. A
Yeah,
dog
I
is a
have
companion. A cat is its own thing, doing what it wants. So I think
that's very true. Cats are quite selfish. They're quite independent. Summer camp chaos or quiet retreat weekend?
Oh, okay. That's changed. So I would have said summer camp chaos through my 20s and 30s. And I think now I'd like a quiet retreat. So
you'd like to slow down.
yeah, the last 15 to 20 years, that's shifted. I think I've done so many camps over the years, particularly with young people, that after a while you just feel camped out. So as in not camping out, but I've done it enough.
Yeah. When you reflect back over the sort of decades of camps and retreats and events and all the things that you've been doing with youth work, is there anything that stands out as a highlight moment or time where you're just like, wow, God, you were incredible in that?
I mean, there are a couple of moments. So there was one in particular where when I was serving on New Wine, funnily enough, and doing captain's crew, which is years ago, there was a guy called Alan Price who led the kids ministry. We used to have 1,000 kids in a big barn. One year we gave them all kazoos at the same time. Don't ever do
wild.
that. Giving a kazoo to 3 kids is enough, but 1,000 at the same time was insane.
Wow, yeah.
That wasn't my memory.
I was going to say, like, that clearly scarred you a little bit, though.
Yeah, that's a scarring, not a kind of joyful memory. But in one of the years, we had 2 lads, David and Daniel, who came up to me as their kind of small group leader and said, can you, just pray with us. We think God's speaking to us about some stuff, so we just want to know what it means. So one of them said they just had kind of this picture of a kind of almost like a blazing fire coming into their tent and spelling out the words, I have chosen you, and then going out of their tent again. The other one had just been praying and felt like there was something around kind of prayer and what they should be praying for. And they just said, we don't know what this is about, so can you tell us? And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't know what God's saying to you. So I did the thing that we often do, which is, I'll pray about it, you pray about it some more, and let's see what God says, which is a kind of get out, isn't it? Is it like, let's seek the Lord together and find out. So I sent them off. Part of me was like, maybe that's the end of it. But then they came back and said, okay, we've prayed about it some more. We know what God wants us to do. God wants us to pray for leaders. So can you get as many leaders together as you can, and then we can come and pray for them? So we had 50 leaders on the blues team, which was the 7 and 8-year-olds. And, I should say they're 7 and 8, these lads.
Yeah.
And then about 50 team leaders on the kind of red team, which is the 9s and 10s at the time. So before we were due to meet that evening for our session, I got all the leaders together for both teams. So just over 100 leaders. And these 2 lads came. And their mums turned up with them, and they were very apologetic. Well, we're so sorry about this. But I was like, no, it's great. And they came in to the marquee, and they prayed for all of these leaders. And they prayed for 40 minutes. And they didn't get bored or tired of what they were doing. They just prayed for everybody. They just went round one by one. And they both had different ways of doing it. So one would just kind of pray quietly in tongues. The other one would just lay a hand on the shoulder, and obviously it had something modelled around prayer. So it was what's your name? Are you okay if I pray with you?
Oh,
and
good.
So doing
safeguarding practices.
So,
well done, that lad.
This is years ago.
They had it
ahead
of its time.
They had it nailed. So they did that for 40 minutes and just went round praying for everybody. And the only bit at which they kind of, the childlikeness remained there. So that was the thing that I was, that I was thrilled to be part of it, and that God, gave me the confidence to go, get the leaders together, do it.
Yeah.
And then after they prayed for everybody, they just came up and said, can you just ask if everybody how people have been? Have they felt that God's spoken to them while we've been praying for them? So I just asked the team, do you feel God's met with you as these kids have prayed for you? And, forests of hands went up. And this is the bit where they were just like in their childlikeness. They just both went, yes, come on.
Oh, so just come on, God.
Come on, yes.
Yeah.
So very excited about it all.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh,
but it was just, I think that just made me realise, man, there's nothing that God can't do through kids, but also God is speaking to children. And the challenge for us as adults is we're often gatekeepers to what they get to do. So it's not that that God's going to just use them anyway. We're often, can be a block in the way, or we can open doors and enable them to step into what God's got for them.
That's so true.
And I think that for me has been a thrill to kind of keep that memory and continue to allow that to kind of, nothing's impossible for God. He's speaking to kids. What might he do here? So often I'll reference that when I'm feeling like, what is going on? Are we getting anywhere? I'll be reminded of that and think, well, God can do anything. God is happening. God is doing things.
Daniel
He's here.
and David, you said? Daniel and
David. I know, what great names.
It's brilliant.
So that was great. That's probably one of my ministry highlights, full stop, was just these two lads praying for people for ages.
That is
and
incredible.
Just getting on with it. Yeah.
I love that. I love how you say about, for one of them, clearly like they'd had something modelled. I have other this or that's, and we might come back to them in a minute, but I'm far more interested in what we're talking about right now. So this week, I have been pondering Psalm 8, verse 2, which says this. It says, "Through the praise of children and infants, you have established a stronghold against your enemies to silence the foe and the avenger." So through the praise of children and infants. And the thing that I have been pondering is, how do we release children fully into worship? So I was having a conversation with a youth leader not that long ago, and she was saying, the youth in my church don't really like worship. They don't really like singing. So we don't play kids songs in the groups. Occasionally, like, we might play an adult worship song like in the background while they're doing something else, or maybe like we'll put it on and they'll have like some quiet time to just like listen. But we don't really do singing. We don't really, because they don't like it. And at the time, we were talking about other things as well, and it kind of bypassed me. But then I read this verse, that it's through the praise of children and infants that God can establish a stronghold against our enemies. And I was just like, what responsibility, and how do we, as adults who sometimes get in the way and sometimes make it harder for young people, teach them and release them into what it is to worship and to be free in that? Can you speak to that from your experience?
Well, my first thing is, what do we mean by praise? So I would say that I've grown up with, shall we call it kind of contemporary soft rock, has been the kind of style of worship that we've generally had at kind of evangelical charismatic events, where predominantly those attending are white, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So that has a particular flavour and look to it. It's not like Pentecostal worship. It's not like sacramental Eucharistic worship. Mm-hmm. And, there are different ways to praise. And I think one of the challenges is we expect young people to join in with what we're doing. And I sometimes get frustrated, not with young people, but with the culture we've created that means all they bring is a copy of what we've done. So going back to kind of, there's good modelling. Mm-hmm. And then I think sometimes there's not creating space where children, young people bring their own creativity to it.
Yeah.
So are we limiting what worship or praise looks like? And I think for me, sometimes that's the place where we need to be interrogating our own practice. If you've got children, I'm not saying this is true of that youth worker, but if you're in worship with everybody together, do children, young people see their own parents worship?
I think this is more the challenge. I think this is more the challenge, that it's what's being modelled is freedom being modelled, through the adults in their worship, whether it's, high church or Pentecostal or whatever kind of practice and outworking it is. But like, is it being modelled that there is a freedom in worshipping our Father God? Or can we, and I think you're right, in our very kind of British whiteness, be a bit stoical, a little bit prim and proper, keep it all contained. And I think
things like, so I grew up with a song like, "You shall go out with joy and be led forth with peace." But whenever we sang it in my church, nobody looked like they were going out with joy.
Right, I know. The one that I always get stuck on is the one that says, I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart, where? And I feel like all the unbelievers around us are going, where? Where is this joy you speak of? Because I don't see it. And I'm like, come on, as Christians, we shouldn't have to be burrowing down to find it. Should be overflowing, yeah.
And I think because young people value authenticity and people being real,
Yes.
they can tell when people are being fake. And I'm not saying we're worshipping in a fake way. I'm just saying our words don't match what we're doing with our bodies and how we're interacting with what we say we believe and what we're singing. And I think that's telling. And maybe some of it is kind of like, but we're English and we kind of stand here in rows and we do it all properly. But I think there is something around kind of, are we willing to have the kind of freedom, energy, joy, wonder that so often kids bring in a space? And do we create the kind of atmosphere where actually you can worship however you want? You can lie down, you can sit down, you can run around, you can do star jumps through worship if you want. It's how do you want to praise rather than, we stand here, we stand up at this point, we sit down again.
Yeah.
So the first thing I do is interrogate the model that's being modeled. Are we entering into it? And again, going back to captain's crew and being on team, we always used to say to team, when I was leading the blue team, so for a while I was leading the 7s and 8s, which was a thrill, but we always had to say to team, you've got to model what you're seeing at the front. So if we've got people at the front who are modeling what the actions are, if we're doing an action song, they're modeling how to engage with it. So you have to model it as team. And we had young team on there. So we had 14, 15, 16-year-olds who did not really want anybody to be looking at them at all. But I would say to them, but your small group is looking at you. They're looking at what's happening at the front. Then they're turning and looking at you and going, are we supposed to be doing that?
Yeah. And if
and
you're,
if you're
doing
not
it,
modeling
then
it,
they'll join in.
if you're doing it, they'll join in. But if you're not modeling it, they'll be like, okay, maybe we're not supposed to be doing it.
We don't have to. Yeah. Okay. Better
we're
not.
just an audience rather than we're a congregation or a gathering of people doing it together. So I think, are we encouraging people to be passive recipients or active participants when it comes to worship? And, what does it look like in terms of our model?
So how would you encourage maybe church leaders if they're saying, I want to help my congregation move from being, passive observers into active participants who are all in, whatever it looks like for them in their worship for Jesus? Like, how would you encourage church communities to go on that journey together?
I think if you lack confidence about doing things with everybody in together, that communicates itself to the congregation. So have people leading, for example, all age or intergenerational worship that really believe in it and are passionate about it and want to do it. So don't do all age worship because you have to.
Yes.
Because it's on the rota. Monthly, we're all in together.
Now's the slot.
We've got to do it. I'm going to try and do an intergenerational activity, but I can't wait till it's over. Those kind of
You're
things.
Right, because they'll see through it. Young people see what's real, for sure.
Kids and young people can pick up whether you want to be with them or not, and whether you want to, whether you believe in what you're doing. So I think you've got to be able to laugh at yourself. You've got to be able to be relaxed and have fun in front of people. And I think a lot of times there's a kind of, but I'm the church leader. I've got to look a certain way or be a certain way.
Right. Yeah.
So I think we have to get over ourselves when we're at the front. Park our ego. Park whatever bit of our pride we think we're going to lose by doing something that's got actions in it, or being a bit funny with a joke or a story, or doing something that's engaging and draws everyone in. And I just, personal stories that make us a little bit vulnerable are great ways of sharing a bit of our real self. And obviously there's appropriate vulnerability. The congregation isn't a place for you to have a cathartic counselling session about stuff that's going on in your life. But it is a place where you should be appropriately vulnerable in a way that kind of draws people into you're a real person. The challenges you're talking about in your sermon that's coming up, they're the same challenges you have. They're not just things you're telling everybody else to, just get a grip of your prayer life. You're acknowledging, actually, I struggle with prayer. Let's explore how we can discover more about that together. So I do think there's invitational kind of stuff we can do where we're sharing a story we're part of, rather than we're telling people about something almost like we're an observer
like we've
ourselves.
Made it on the other side and we have all the answers. Like, that's not helpful, is it? And also
so I
not
think
true.
it's modeling it. So, if you're going to talk about prayer, have the generations pray for each other. The most powerful times of prayer I've ever seen in the church is when kids and young people and adults pray for each other.
Mm.
You know, the generations praying for each other before they go out to their groups or do other things. And those things can open up the possibility of other things happening. You've just got to start somewhere.
Okay. One of my questions, which was quite important to me to know to see whether we can be friends or not, is Marmite. Love it or hate it?
Love it.
No!
Yes,
that was
love
the
it.
wrong answer. Oh, okay. And then my final question, which wasn't a this or that for now, is do you have a current favourite Bible character? And I say current favourite because I'm kind of the opinion of whatever passage you're reading in the Bible in the moment, normally they become your favourite. But is there somebody that kind of you kind of find yourself going back to a lot or resonating with or just going, wow, what a dude, they were brilliant?
I go back to Peter all the time.
Yes, I'm a big Peter fan.
Like, partly it's like because he was one of the sources for Mark's gospel. What I love is so much of his real self is in Mark's gospel. Whereas if Mark was asking me about stuff and he was writing a book about me where I was featuring in it, it's not about me, it's about Jesus. But if I was featuring in it and my interactions with Jesus, I'd pick the best bits.
You'd be like, oh yeah, check me out. I looked really good on this day. I had the
not
right
pick
answer.
the bits where I look like an idiot. But Peter just shares it like it is. Yes. So a lot of that stuff's in Mark's gospel. And then is in the others as well. But in terms of that,
he's so relatable.
Understanding who he is, he's so relatable, but he's honest, you know. And he means what he says, even when he stuffs it up.
Yes. I was just going to say, I think one of the things I love about Peter is the number of times that he puts his foot in it and he speaks before really thinking through what he's about to say. And then you kind of go, oh yeah, I do that all the time. I do that as well. And Jesus doesn't shame him. He just goes,
but
okay.
He's an all-in character. So the bit I like is the washing of the disciples' feet.
Yeah.
Particularly because he's like, no, you're not going to do that. And then when Jesus says, if I don't wash your feet, you have no part of me. He's like, all of me then.
Yes.
So it's like he's gone from nothing.
My head to the tip of my toes, like everything. Yeah, don't leave anything out.
He's gone from nothing to everything. And that's his kind of nature, I think. And it comes out in that, but it comes out in other things. Like when he leaps out the boat, when the others are just like, what is happening? He's out the boat before anything else.
Before anyone can even blink. Yeah. Oh, that's so good.
That is him. I love him.
Oh, so Ali, give us a little flavour. Is there such a thing as a kind of standard day to day for you? What has God got you up to in this season of life?
I guess freelancing wise, every day's different. So I do enjoy that. I like routine in some ways in terms of my 6:20 get up in the morning. But in terms of what I do during the day, I like a kind of rich diet of different things. So I'm involved in mentoring youth and children's workers. I'm involved in writing resources. I'm involved in doing consultancy. So even just today, I've got things like invoices I've got to sort out. So some of it, when you freelance, you've got to do the admin, which I don't enjoy, but you've got to do it. But then in terms of ministry stuff, the kind of mentoring I really love. So that's just journeying alongside youth and children's workers, normally via Zoom. So a lot of that I was doing in person. Then post-COVID, nearly all of it's now in Zoom. I barely used it before COVID, so it just shows the way things have changed and shifted. But in terms of mentoring, supporting people, I love doing that. And in terms of resourcing, try and write stuff that's free. So, whether it's articles or blogs, but also resources that people can download from our website. Most of that's free. So I try and spend some time doing those things.
Yeah.
And then consultancy. So that's just supporting churches, organisations who are looking at their youth and children's work and thinking, what do we do next? Or we're stuck, or we want to employ somebody, we're not quite sure what we're looking for, or how to shape a job, all that kind of thing.
I think that's really valuable if people and churches or organisations are in that place where they know they want to hire someone to get somebody in to help them figure out what exactly they need, because I think so often, and it comes back to this kind of creativity and innovation and kind of pioneering spirit, we can be tempted to just do what's happened before because that's what we know and that's like how it's done, air quotes, as opposed to saying, well, hang on, this is a real opportunity, we've got a gap here, what might be the new thing that God might want to do. And especially in the country at the moment, with all of the talk of the quiet revival and younger generations like rocking up at churches just being like, well, I just felt like I should come to church today, or I had a dream of Jesus, or somebody gave me a Bible and I read it and I want to know more. Like there's such a stirring that as the kind of established church across the country, all different denominations, we're all in a position where it's like, well, we've got an opportunity here to respond, but let's not just fall back on kind of standardized practices of this is how it's always been, because God's doing a new thing, so it needs a new response, I think, anyway. So one of the things that you have mentioned is about like the ministry of showing up. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and why it is so important?
So, I mean, I just coined it as a kind of thing, but I just think it's the most important thing to do. So it's that consistency of turning up and being present. So 40 years nearly, next year will be 40 years I've been doing youth and children's ministry. So I think for me, like the longevity thing has been about just having that level of commitment. I'm not feeling it, but I'm turning up anyway. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm turning up anyway. I don't know who's going to be there, but I'm turning up anyway. So, and I think over time, we see God do stuff that we haven't kind of believed is possible or imagined. But if we don't hang around, we're less likely to kind of see that. Things don't happen overnight. One of the things I'm challenged by that the church is getting into a little bit, because it's got an existential crisis. I can't even say that word. Existential. There we go. Existential crisis about the future. So in some ways, we're doing children's and youth ministry because we're trying to save the church that's to come, rather than doing it because children and young people are worth investing in for their own sake.
And also they are the church of right now as well. Like that's one of my pet peeves where people are like, oh yeah, they're the future church. And I'm like, no, they are the church right now. If they're in the church, they're the church.
So they are so much the church. But I think part of the challenge is we still have churches surviving on rotas where people will sign up and, do children's youth work once every 6 weeks. And I'm thinking, but the children are there every week. Why aren't you there every week? And that's just been,
come on.
That's just been my approach the whole time I've been doing it, really.
It's a tough one, isn't it? What about those people who are in churches whereby there's only one service every week? It's not some big church where there's a big staff team and there's loads of people, all the rest of it. And so there's one church service, and the kids ministry happens in the morning, and they want to be there consistently for the young people so that the relationships can go deep and build and they can be known and the children can be known. But then they don't get to kind of go to church for themselves. Like, how would you encourage people in that situation?
Well, it's tricky because part of me feels like actually the service isn't where I get sustained in my life with God. So I'd kind of start there and just say, to be honest, that it's great to be together and worship together. But if part of my reason I'm potentially feeling like I'm missing out is because this sustains my life with God, my question would be, what are you doing the rest of the time?
Come on.
For me, most of us are growing through being part of small groups and doing discipleship in a smaller context and setting. So I'd also look at other ways in which I can worship with people in a gathering. One of the things that I think's nice to do, particularly if you're employed in a church, so you might be the children's or youth worker, and you only have a morning service, but you're kind of there serving the whole time, so you don't get to join in with other stuff. But maybe you can have a thing where you go and worship somewhere else in an evening. And the advantage of that, particularly if you're doing children's and youth work regularly, is you can go and do it somewhere else without having responsibility for anybody.
Yeah, you can take off that responsibility hat.
Just worship and be. And nobody's coming up to you asking about a rota or kind of, why is that window smashed in the bathroom and the youth club we're in, so was it them? All that kind of stuff that happens. you can just worship. So I think it's asking themselves the question, what is it I'm looking for? And what does community look like for us when it comes to being church? Is being church coming to a service? Or is it broader and wider than that? And so it's looking at the opportunities I have to engage with others that sustain my life with God and mean I feel fully part of the community. Is there a sacrifice or something that we're kind of giving up in order to journey well with children and young people? Sometimes there is. So it is asking what we're willing to do to enable that journeying to happen. But then if children and young people are also missing out on worship, we need to ask ourselves what we're modeling to them. So lots of kids go out before there's any worship and don't come back until the service is finished. So unless you've got a youth band leading worship for the kids, they don't actually see worship at all. And they don't
so then they're going
experience
to grow up and become part of the adult congregation that also is a little bit like put off by some worship or by music and a bit like, I don't know how to engage with this because they've never experienced it.
So are we offering children and young people the full diet of what it is to kind of worship as God's people together? Or are they only getting bits of it because the adults are doing all of it somewhere else?
That's so good.
So I think it's thinking all of those things through and then thinking, where's my place in that? And also maybe bringing challenge to church leadership that doesn't like to think intergenerationally, is only trying to do stuff with adults, and bring a little bit of pushback and say, we need to do more stuff together.
Let the children come. Let the children come. One of my hands down all-time favourite youth pastors, youth workers that I've ever come across was the chap that our church hired just before we left in New Zealand, an amazing guy called Alex. And I think the reason that he was so phenomenal at what he did wasn't just because he was just highly gifted, but he passionately loved Jesus and he passionately loved young people. And that was it. You didn't need anything else. And he wasn't doing it as like a stepping stone to the next thing. I think oftentimes in the UK churches we've been in over the decades, we've kind of seen this idea that children's ministry or youth ministry is like a job that you do to then become a proper leader, or it's like a stepping stone to something else, but it's not the final destination. So for someone like yourself, you said 40 years next year, amazing. And just say that's so incredible and beautiful and amazing. Why is it that you think youth work or children's work, serving in those spaces, is something that's seen more like something that like has to be done, or with like a bit of a chip on your shoulder of like, oh, I've got to do it to like pay my dues before I can go and do, like, air quotes, the proper work of leadership or the proper ministry? How do we encourage and raise up more leaders who just see the value of young people and children? So a bit of a garbled question. The question is, why do people treat it like a stepping stone? How do we encourage people to go the distance? And what is the importance of raising up these generations to be fully released into the fullness of what God has for them?
Okay, I'll take those in two parts. The first bit, I think, is I'm not sure that's true. So when I did a piece of research back in 2019 for the Bishop of Leicester, one of the questions I asked, and I had over 500 responses to this question. 600 took part in a survey I did around terms and conditions for youth and children's ministers. And I asked the question, if you could stay in children's and youth ministry until retirement, would you if you could? And 75% said they would if they could.
Oh, come on, that's so encouraging.
So I don't think we have, generally speaking, those employed are not people, I think, who are just doing their dues. They are generally people who are passionate about children's and youth ministry. The challenge comes for the church around how we sustain people long-term in ministry. When, if I'm really blunt, people aren't paid enough.
Yeah.
So if you've got dependents, you've got family, you've got other commitments, there comes a point when you can't just keep doing it.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I'm really blunt, I don't understand why we have church leaders, particularly in the Church of England, on a stipend where the national minimum stipend at the moment is just over 30k, And yet, in addition to that, they have a 4-bedroom detached house if they're a stipendiary incumbent. So they've got their study that's not in the corner of their bedroom. They're not paying rent. They don't pay council tax. I don't understand why we have this disparity between stipendiary clergy, so the ordained, and the laity who are employed. And as much as expected, if not sometimes more, because they're working with children, young people and families, and are often the catalysts for growth in a church. So there is this massive disparity, but it comes to a point where you've got churches where they've only got funding for 4 or 5 years. So then you've got salaried workers who are then needing to look elsewhere. And then that can be a struggle. You also have people who get to a point where actually I need to be earning more money than I'm earning now. So it's still not uncommon for people to be on 25, 26K as a full-timer, and that not to have changed much in the last decade. So I put a thing out on my Facebook.
Yeah.
Well,
I was going to say it's very different.
I put a thing out on my. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say if you're like a young 20-something, just out of studies or whatever, and you're doing that, you think that that's a brilliant salary, or maybe you did 10 years ago, maybe not so much now, but like great. Yeah. But that is not going to be a brilliant salary, like you say, if you've got a spouse and dependents, and you're trying to be on the property ladder, and live in this world where prices just keep going up and all the rest of it. Like that isn't sustainable. Like it's not
it's not
doable.
Sustainable. So I have asked clergy sometimes, and I need to be careful when I ask the question, but I have asked clergy sometimes if you were just paid £30,000 and you didn't have the house and you had to pay your rent or your mortgage out of that 30K, could you be in ministry? Most of them can't. So I struggle to understand how they think other people can.
Yeah.
And that's not on the local church, that is on the denominations and national streams that need to be thinking about what their investment looks like long term.
Yeah.
And there are things that are happening that are good news that I haven't seen before. So it's not all, I'm not being doom and gloomy. I'm recognizing there's significant challenges around sustaining people in ministry long term. And we're now finally realizing we have to invest. So, Church of England, because I know it quite well, they're now doing kind of putting millions of pounds in each year to kind of training and support. They've got the 30K project, which is about finding another 3,000 salaried children's and youth ministers, another 27,000 volunteers. And that's a national initiative to kind of up the ante on what we're doing. That wasn't happening 5 years ago. So that's good news. It's just there's a lot to do. And, we can't make up for what we've not done for 30 years in the next couple of years because there's a project called the 30K project. I think that's the challenge, is beyond that, we've got to see this as sustainable ministry.
Yeah.
So, there's massive challenges. Dioceses shouldn't be thinking, right, okay, clergy, you can all have sabbaticals after 5, 6, 7 years, and we'll help pay for it. Here's some ongoing training for you, which we'll pay for.
Yeah.
Here's a clergy conference where you get to do a residential retreat and we'll pay for that, or your PCC will pay for it. Oh, it is just for clergy. You can't bring your staff to it. It's just there's things where there's so much disparity around different aspects of leadership. It gets very challenging to stay in it.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason. But then against that, we've got people who are sacrificing things. There's people who've been in touch with me that are having parents help them with their mortgage because they want to stay in ministry. Those kind of things. There's youth workers I know who haven't got a car. They're deciding to cycle everywhere because they can't afford to run a car, but they want to stay in ministry, serving children and young people. So it's the disparity is a thing I'm trying to tackle. So the reason I set up Paraclesis a few years ago, which is the Association for Children's, Youth and Family Ministers, was to advocate for better terms and conditions, to see, children's youth ministry as a vocation for life, not just something that is a stepping stone.
Yeah.
And for many children's and youth ministers, they want to do it forever.
Yeah.
So how do we make that happen?
And so Paraclesis, is that Church of England only, or is that interdenominational? That's for everybody.
No, that's for everyone. So it's whatever movement, denomination you're in. So it's open to all.
Brilliant.
And one of the things I think is exciting about just children's youth ministry, which for me is a model, is something that should, I think, speak to the church generally, is I don't know a children's or youth minister that says, oh, I'm an Anglican or I'm a Baptist.
Yeah.
I generally know people who are doing children's youth ministry who are followers of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so when you get a group of youth and children's workers together, they're not wondering which denomination anyone is in.
Yeah.
They're just all there together, looking at how they can collaborate and serve God together. So there's something about unity that I think is modeled when children's youth workers get together that should be saying something prophetic to the church. Why can't our denominations do this better? You know, where we'll come together because we've got this shared value or this shared heart for an area of ministry or something that we're doing. You know, recently at the National Youth Ministry Weekend with, 1,000 youth and children's workers from across the country, and nobody was doing anything. You know, there were a few things where they were getting together with people who are from their same denomination. But the main thing was just, we're doing this with everybody all together. We didn't have denominational streams you all disappeared off to do your own thing. Because when it comes down to it, we've got the shared, those two things you mentioned, passionate about loving Jesus, loving young people, and those two things being at the heart of what we do. I think one of the other things about sustainability, just now I'm on a roll, so I'm going to keep going.
Love it.
Is sometimes with job descriptions, people list about 15 to 20 tasks they want delivered. So you see a job description, you've got all these tasks that I'm supposed to do. And at the bottom, it also says, and anything else the vicar asks you to do kind of thing. I've got 20 things to do. I don't need 21, and I don't need that thing that the vicar's going to expect me to do as well. But one of the challenges with the job description is it focuses very much on the tasks that the church wants done rather than the young people and who they are. So if you've got a job description that's focused on programs and delivering activities, it should really be more about the themes. What are the key things you want to see happen? And certainly post-COVID, we need to be far more flexible about how we're responding to things and be a little bit quicker to think about, well, actually, it's not about this activity that we're running. That club's not working. Let's just ditch it and we'll do something else because that's going to connect in a different way or in a fresh way with the young people we're now reaching or we're now seeing. And so if you have I would always say the person spec's more important than the job description.
Yeah.
So who you appoint is more important than what you want them to do at the start.
Yeah.
And somebody great is going to make that job look completely different in 3-5 years anyway. So the job description becomes something you regularly review and should be a movable feast rather than, well, we've asked you to do these things and they're kind of set in concrete. That's not attractive. If you're an experienced practitioner, just a tip for church leaders, if you're an experienced practitioner and you're looking to move and you see something just with 20 things you want to just keep maintaining, that's much less attractive than to somebody say, here's 2-3 things that we want you to do. We trust you to do it because we're looking for an experienced practitioner. And there's 20% of space within your week where we're expecting you to do something creative and new that we're not currently doing.
Imagine if all of the job descriptions for youth workers and children's workers across the land shifted and we're giving you 20% to pioneer and be creative and to dream big with Jesus for the young people. Imagine, that would be amazing.
Imagine. Because often there's new things.
Yeah.
There's new things that people want to do, but if they look at their week, they can't do them because what am I going to drop? There's no capacity. So if we're employing for growth or we're employing for reaching people we're not currently working with, you have to have built into the job capacity to go and do it.
Yeah.
And I think because sometimes churches are anxious and aren't fully aware of what they're doing. Let's be honest. Sometimes people are employed to be the children's youth family minister / evangelist / parent worker. And if you do social media and you want to lead worship, we take those as well. And so you find a church wants 8 people, not 1.
Yeah.
But
they've only got the budget for half time of one person.
Yeah, well, they haven't even got the budget for 1. I know. So, but that, in terms of kind of thinking about the investment, there's 2 things really. You're investing in a person. So the more you support somebody you employ, the more likely they're going to stay. So the investment is not just, we want youth ministry to happen. It's we want to invest in the person we're going to employ. We want to make sure they feel looked after, that they can thrive in ministry here. So here's what we're putting in place to support them. But then you're also communicating something to young people. You're saying, we value this so much that we're saying to you now, this is a permanent appointment. This is not, we're going to see what happens, an experiment for 3 years. And if it doesn't work, you don't have a youth worker. So it is, churches need to think that through. But I also think they need to push on their denominations or streams and say, we need your help because we cannot do it locally.
Yeah.
So there's churches I know with massive heart for young people, would love a full-time salaried youth and children's minister, but they can't afford it. And they're in a place where their congregation can't pay for it. And it's true in lots of parts of the church that those places that are poorer, the people giving are giving a greater percentage of what they don't have than in some of the wealthier places where people are giving what I would see comparatively in terms of what some people are earning, a pittance. But, they can afford out of their little from, in terms of, percentage-wise, in terms of what people are being paid to employ somebody. So there's a massive disparity between often the South and the North in terms of the country around who can do what. So if the church was together a little bit more, maybe we could have some of the richer places in the South supporting ministry across the country. I'd love to see that.
That would be great. That would be great. I want to pivot a little bit because I think you have some experience that might be able to encourage other adults who find themselves, midway through career and life and suddenly interrupted by redundancy or something unexpected. Tell us what happened for you and how you came back from being made redundant, because I think it was like when you were in your mid-40s. Tell us about that fun experience.
So it was so fun. So initially it was a surprise because I just thought, well, they can't make my post redundant. Just in my head that wouldn't happen. We were doing children's youth ministry. There was a kind of good sized team. We were doing some stuff that I thought, this is making a difference. And so I think the challenge is, particularly if you're kind of in a regional post doing children's youth ministry, which is what I was doing as I worked for a diocese, was it just became collateral damage in terms of financial challenges the diocese was facing. But then the impact on us as a family was quite significant. We had to make the choice about, the only reason I could be employed was because I was on a lay stipend, and those things don't really exist anymore.
Right.
So I did have, it was funny, when we moved into the house that we had, the buildings person from the diocese apologized. I'm so sorry, this is one of our smaller properties. And it was a massive 4-bedroom detached house with a huge driveway that we could get our caravan and 2 cars on. So you're like, well, I don't know what a big one looks like.
Wow,
this is okay.
Yeah.
So I was just like this is unreal. Yeah, all right, we'll live here if we have to. But it just, again, it paints a picture of the unreality, I think, around certain things within the church. But flash forward 9 years, we're doing lots of things that I think we're making a difference. But because of the stipend, it did mean this potentially means we're leaving this area. We were in Sussex. There's no way we could live anywhere in Sussex, unless I was suddenly going to earn £100,000 a year. So we had to think, where do we go? My wife was working, so that was her job as well to consider. Kids were in school, happy in their schools. So, so it was a lot. So I did negotiate staying for a couple of years within the house, and I was paid for services to the diocese whilst not being employed by them so that we could continue to live there. That gave us a bit of breathing space, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to God because I don't know how I negotiated some of the things I did as I took redundancy, because it was only God dropping things into my head. It's the only way I can imagine how I did it. So, different things that took place that just were staggering to me as part of the whole process, but the key thing that impacted me was, what does this mean for me in terms of my call? So if we're made redundant, how wedded to the role and the particular work we were doing is our sense of identity and our sense of self? So for me, in my mid-40s, I had to think, who am I?
Yeah.
I've just been made redundant. I was known as the Youth and Children's Advisor for the Diocese of Chichester, and now I'm just Ali Campbell. Not those things, because that's not what I'm doing. So part of me, maybe initially there was a sense of belligerence about it, thinking, well, I'm called to this, so I'm going to carry on doing it anyway. So there was a part of that in terms of the establishment of the resource. But also it did get to a point where it made me narrow in on my focus of what's God got for me, who's God called me to be, and is that dependent upon human beings making decisions?
That's good.
Now, I think we have to be careful with that sometimes, because there are people in ministry that we think they should not be in ministry. So we can't do it with kind of, completely blind to reality sometimes. If we think, well, I'm called to do this, and then people are like, no, I don't think you are.
Yeah, questionable.
But when we know it in the center of who we are, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, and there's been confirmation in different ways on that. It's recognizing that God anoints, but human beings appoint. And so it's being able to live under the anointing, if you like, of God, not making me special, but what he's choosing to do through me is what enables me to keep showing up, coming back to what I was talking about. So we were doing things that were, again, consequences of the decisions being made that were out of our hands around different aspects. So we were leading a fresh expression on the village that we were working with. That was all tied in with my role. So that was coming to an end as well. So a lot of it felt like shake the dust, in terms of that kind of feeling. And then part of me feels like, actually, have I been complacent have I been settled? Have I been so comfortable in what I'm doing that I've just been coasting a bit, if I'm really honest, and maybe I'm not saying God said, make him redundant. I'm just saying sometimes those things happen. And then when we start exploring them, we kind of, who we are comes into sharper focus. What we've been doing comes into sharper focus. And then it's a reminder of like, well, if this is what God's got for me, I now have to find a different way of making it happen. And so the resource started almost straight away. I did have a pause over the summer. And we did finish on a high as a team in terms of when we did finish finally, is in July 2014. We did a conference with John Westerhoff over from America, who wrote a book years ago called Will Our Children Have Faith, which if anybody's done any kind of children of faith formation, training, they'll have read John Westerhoff. Okay. Sadly, when I've done ordination training or clergy training, hardly any clergy have ever read John Westerhoff or noticed who he is, which is really disappointing, because I'm like, you should know about children and young people's faith development. Yeah. Because even if you're not doing it yourself,
you're not just going to be the vicar of like grown-ups. Yeah.
So with, again, it's a C of E thing, but I think it accounts for kind of everybody can think in this term. Yeah. So when you become a priest in the C of E, you get your little bottle of oil that is like your cure of souls. So it's kind of an indication of kind of this, you're there for the whole parish, for everybody who lives in your parish, and you have the cure of souls for everybody. So that's like, they're all my responsibility. So when I'm doing training for clergy, I often ask, what age does that start at? At what age do you begin to have the cure of souls? And it's like from birth, there isn't a kind of point at which you start. And yet I think lots of adults in ministry who only work with adults don't see their responsibility if they're leading a church for every generation. So even if you're not doing it yourself, you need to be caring about it and looking at how you can enable ministry to be happening with every generation in the church. So for me, there's something around pressing into what God's got for me, but also after doing it for so long, it's just, there's so many things I've seen that God has shown me through working with children, young people. I get pictures and glimpses of who he is through the eyes of kids that I don't get from working with adults. I just don't. So one quick illustration, we were doing, I think it was, Luke 15, we were doing the story of kind of lostness and talking about sheep. And in our midweek kids club, we were crawling around on the floor pretending to be sheep. And there was a green kind of carpet laid out as a kind of pasture. So this is the good pasture we're heading to and all that kind of thing. So it was the lostness, it was mixed in with the Lord's my shepherd, Psalm 23. But then we got there and we did the classic kind of kids activity where you make your sheep with your cotton ball walls and all that kind of stuff. And then we wrote on the other side things that, what would it be like to have Jesus as our shepherd? So, kids were writing different things. And one of the things I would really encourage anybody who's doing children's and youth ministry is pay attention to what children and young people write when you ask them to write anything about who God is to them, about what is going on, because you will find gold that you don't see anywhere else. So I just, the kids were just writing their own things kind of. So I looked at one of the sheep from my own kids' small group, and this child had just written, so thinking about what's it like to have Jesus as our shepherd, what would we like to walk with him? And she'd just written to walk with joy.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that should be what it's like. That is what it's like if we're walking close to Jesus. So it's just that, little moments where you just glimpse the way a child sees their relationship with God and who he is.
Yeah.
And it resonates with me because I see so much of that in Jesus's interaction with children, and how precious they were to him. And so often the disciples think they're helping by stopping the children getting, that bit where they think they're helping, they think they're doing what Jesus wants them to do.
They're like being his
but they're
bodyguard.
stopping. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Wanting to usher him off to a green room.
And it's this, well, yes, let's not go there. But in terms of there shouldn't be green rooms anyway, or platforms. Anyway, so, but in terms of
for another time,
that is another time. But in terms of thinking about children's and youth ministry, like when we come back to when we're talking about worship and praise and what that looks like. So, people wanting to stop the children praising Jesus when he's in the temple. And he's basically like, if they shut up, the rocks and, the very ground is going to cry out.
Yeah.
But there's something that children notice about who Jesus is. And it's that, for me, that is what sustains me in doing it. I want to be...
Yeah,
I want to be with those who I think on earth are closest to him.
Yeah. And we are all called to have childlike faith for a reason.
Yeah, totally.
Because it's that wonder, the innocence and wonder of seeing Jesus for who he is. I really love the verse in Mark, I think it's Mark 9, where Jesus comes back from being away and like the crowd see him and they run to him and it says like overwhelmed with wonder. And it's that running like that, the inhibitions have been thrown off. They're not worried about whether it looks appropriate to be running right now, or, it's just that sheer abandonment and desperation to get close to Jesus. I love that. Ali, thank you so much for your time this morning. I feel like there's like treasures that we could mine from your decades of experience all day. One thing I just wanted to say to anyone listening who feels that they are kind of going through that shaking, Ali, you kind of talked about that idea that, had you got comfortable and did things need to be shaken up? And I'm just thinking about when you have a bottle of medicine from the doctor and it'll say, shake it up before pouring it onto the spoon for the kid or whatever, because if you don't shake it up, what happens is it settles to the bottom, doesn't it? And then that means the stuff at the top loses its potency and its strength, and in order for it to have its full impact, it needs to be shaken up. And I just wonder if someone listening today is feeling like their situation in life right now is a bit shaky, and I just want to say, don't be afraid of being shaken, because maybe God's just wanting to bring you to your full capacity and full potency in his strength, not in your own. So that was just a thought I just wanted to share. But Ali, if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to find out about the resource, if they want to get some of these amazing free resources that you have for them, where is the best place for them to find you online?
So they can go to my website, theresource.org.uk. I'm also hanging out on Substack, although I am doing one, which is where we kind of connected, but I'm doing, where we connected. I guess, posts rather than notes. There's a massive discussion around which is better to do when you're on Substack. But in terms of where I kind of blog and my articles and stuff like that, so if people want regular content, I'm trying to post articles or things that I think are interesting around ministry, leadership, children's youth ministry particularly, So if people are interested in that, do find me on Substack.
Amazing. We will put all the links in the show notes, guys. So if you're driving or not, at a desk or something, you can head there and find those links. Ali, thank you so much.
Can I mention one extra thing just for
Yes.
people that are struggling? So you mentioned the bottle and kind of shaking things up. One of the things that has stayed with me through COVID, but also if I reflect back, it was also something that was there as I was going through redundancy, was there's a brilliant psalm that reflects on the journey of God's people out of the wilderness. And it's just this little line, I can't remember which psalm, but the kind of line stays with me, is you made a way where there was no way, which we've all also whacked into worship songs. And it's just that kind of, what can God enable through what might be really difficult right now? And is there a path that he's going to make for you that you can't see how it's going to happen? And sometimes when things are really tough, we cannot see what God is going to do in this situation. So I would say he's brought me to a good place after 10, 11 years. It's a more spacious place to do ministry than I could have had staying where I was. But it's taken a while for me to recognize and see all of that. But that idea of God can make a way where it seems like there's no way. And for me, that's been true through my whole life and ministry, actually. So, yeah.
That's so good. So good. I was in Exodus earlier this week and just thinking, what must the Israelites have felt when they were cornered? And just noticing that in the NIV, it talks about how when the Egyptian army started pursuing them, they overtook them. So the Egyptian army actually overtook the Israelites. And so how would have that felt like, knowing they essentially, in the eyes of the world, they've won, they've overtaken you, they've beaten you already. Like there's no hope. There's just water, game over. And then, God comes between them and the enemy. He sets himself up between them, so he protects them like that. But then when it talks about, obviously we know the story, God leads them through the water. It talks about then the enemy is overthrown by God. So they might have overtaken you, but God, his power can overthrow. So yeah, all on the same theme. We pray that blesses you guys. Ali, would you do us the honor of just praying for us and anyone who's been listening today as a way of closing out our time together?
Yeah, happy to.
Thank you.
Father, just thank you for our conversation. Thank you for the way you've guided it as we've talked. And just pray for anyone listening. If you've made it this far and listened all the way through, well done. But also just if stuff has been stirred in you, I just really encourage people to kind of press into what you might be noticing that God's saying to you. Maybe it's about children's youth ministry, and that's a passion that you've had and you've not been quite sure how to step into it. Maybe it is you've been in it for a long time and it's a struggle at the minute. But just pray that those listening, watching, might know that God smiles on you, that God delights in you, that God has treasure for you. And sometimes we need to rest and know what it is to kind of lie down before we can press into what God has for us next. So, I feel like that's for some, certainly you've been watching and listening today, is you need to rest. And there's a fruitful season coming, but you need to rest and lie down and enjoy safe pasture, knowing that God has got you and God's got your future. And for anybody facing shaking times, my prayer for you is you would know his strength. And there's a little verse in the middle of Isaiah 58 that just talks about in quietness and trust is your strength. And that idea of kind of being in that place where it's you and God. There isn't the kind of thrum of other stuff that's happening that is all the circumstances surrounding what might be going on in our lives. But in the secret place, dwell in that place with God and he'll bring you through. That's my prayer and my hope for you if it's a struggling time. And I hope, generally speaking, that you've been inspired as you've listened, thinking about children's youth ministry, how vital it is for now, and that children and young people are amazing. So that's my prayer. That's my hope. That there'll be, I don't know, hundreds of people suddenly bursting into the doors of churches saying, we want to do children's youth ministry. Let's do it. Amen.
Amen. Let's do it. In
Let's do
Jesus'
it.
name, amen. Come on. Ali, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really brilliant to get to chat with you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening in and hanging out with me today. If this encouraged you, why not share it with a friend? Or I would love it if you could take a second to rate and review. It really helps more people find the show so they can press in and move forward. And if you want to stay connected, you can find me on Instagram at HelloMTyler or over on Substack at mtyler.substack.com. I would so love to see you there. Until next time, let's keep growing and going.